Night has fallen over the hills of ancient Israel. The air is tense with the quiet dread of an approaching war. Across the valley, the Philistine army waits. Torches flicker like distant stars along their camp lines. And somewhere in the darkness, the king of Israel is afraid. Not just worried, but desperate. This king is Saul, the first monarch of Israel, a man once chosen by God, once anointed with divine favor, once guided by the prophet Samuel. But now Samuel is dead, and God is silent. No dreams, no prophets, no visions. Imagine what that must have felt like for a man who believed his power came directly from heaven. The armies are gathering, the enemy is stronger, future's uncertain. The voice of God, the voice that once guided everything's gone. So Saul does something shocking, breaks his own law. Earlier in his reign, Saul had expelled all mediums and necromancers from the land. Contacting the dead was forbidden in Israelite law, condemned in the book of Deuteronomy as an abomination. But now, standing at the edge of war, Saul disguises himself and travels at night to a small village called Endor. Why? To ask a forbidden question. Can the dead speak? The story appears in first book of Samuel, and it remains one of the most mysterious passages in the entire Bible. When Saul arrives, he seeks out a woman known only as the Witch of Endor. He asks her to do the very thing he once outlawed. Bring up the spirit of Samuel now. Pause for a moment and think logically about what is happening here. The king of Israel, the leader of God's chosen nation, is secretly consulting a necromancer. Why? If God truly guided Saul, why is heaven silent at the moment he needs it most? Is this a story about supernatural power? Or about the terrifying silence of faith during crisis? The woman hesitates at first. She fears a trap. After all, Saul himself had banned people like her. But the disguised king swears an oath. So she begins the ritual. The text tells us that suddenly the woman screams in shock. She claims to see a spirit rising from the earth. It's an old man wrapped in a robe. Saul cannot see the figure himself, but he immediately believes it is Samuel, and then the spirit speaks. It delivers a devastating prophecy. Saul has lost God's favor. Israel will fall in battle, and tomorrow, Saul and his sons will be dead. It is one of the darkest prophecies in the Bible, and, according to the narrative, it comes from the ghost of Samuel himself. But here is where the logical questions begin. Did this woman truly summon the spirit of the dead prophet? Or did something else happen that night? Some scholars believe the story presents a genuine supernatural event. After all, the woman herself seems shocked by what appears. Perhaps she expected a performance. And instead, something real occurred. But others notice something interesting. Saul never actually sees Samuel. He relies entirely on the woman's description. Is it possible she simply staged the event? Ancient mediums often used theatrical techniques, hidden assistants, dim lighting, ventriloquism, or altered voices to convince clients that spirits were present. If that's true, then the Witch of Endor may have been performing a highly skilled deception. But if it was deception, why would the Bible include the story at all? And here the mystery deepens, because the prophecy spoken by the Spirit comes true. Saul dies the very next day in battle against the Philistines. So we are left with a puzzle. If the woman was lying, how did she know the outcome of the battle? Was it coincidence? A clever guess? Or did the writer of the story already know the ending and craft the prophecy afterward? There is another fascinating detail hidden in the Hebrew text. When the woman describes what she sees, she doesn't simply say, Samuel. She says she sees Elohim rising from the earth. The word Elohim can mean God, spirit, or divine being. So what exactly did she claim to see? A ghost? A divine messenger? Or something else entirely? And then there is a deeper theological problem. If God had forbidden necromancy, why would he allow a forbidden ritual to successfully summon a prophet? Would that not undermine the very law God had established? Some ancient interpreters struggled with this question. A few suggested that the spirit wasn't really Samuel at all, but a deceptive spirit pretending to be him. Others argued that God allowed Samuel to appear specifically to condemn Saul's actions. But notice what this reveals. Even within religious tradition, there was no single clear answer. The story itself creates a tension between belief and logic, and maybe that tension is the point. Because when we look at Saul's life, this moment at Endor represents something tragic. It is the moment a king realizes he has lost the guidance he once depended on, is no longer hearing God. He is searching desperately for certainty, even if it means turning to forbidden practices. In other words, this may not just be a story about ghosts. It may be a story about human fear, about the terrifying silence that sometimes follows belief, and about what people are willing to do when they feel abandoned by the divine. Think about it. If Saul truly believed Samuel was speaking to him, then the prophecy would have destroyed his hope before the battle even began. A king convinced he is doomed cannot lead with confidence. Could the prophecy itself have helped create the outcome it predicted? History is filled with leaders who lost before the battle even started, simply because they believed defeat was inevitable. So perhaps the real mystery is not whether Samuel appeared. Perhaps the deeper mystery is why Saul believed he had to look for answers among the dead. What does it say about faith when a king anointed by God feels completely alone? What does it say about human nature that in moments of desperation, people will search for certainty anywhere vain in the shadows of the unknown? The Witch of Endor story has fascinated historians, theologians, and skeptics for centuries because it sits at the crossroads of religion, psychology, and ancient ritual. Was it a real supernatural encounter? A carefully staged illusion? Or a symbolic story about the downfall of a king who had lost his connection with God? The truth may never be fully known, but the questions remain powerful. Did Saul truly speak with the dead? Or was he simply confronting the consequences of his own choices? If this story made you think differently about ancient texts and the mysteries hidden inside them, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because here we explore the historical puzzles, forgotten traditions, and logical questions behind the world's most famous sacred stories. And before you go, tell me in the comments, do you think Saul really saw Samuel's spirit? Or did something else happen that night at Endor? Because the answer might reveal as much about human belief as it does about ancient history.